do for the sustainable development, what we can do. And Professor Ankar Singh is the Vice Chancellor of VMSP Uttarakhand Technical University in Dehradun. Professor Singh, sir, you can deliberate upon. Singh is there? Oh, okay. So we'll go to the next speaker. I'm very happy to have Professor G.S. Rawatji. He is Emeritus Scientist at UCOST. He will be deliberating upon this important discussion, what we are having today morning.
Respected Member of Parliament, Shri Munna Singh Chauhanji, Session Chair, Co-Chair, panelists, and distinguished participants. I'm very happy to give a few thoughts related to disaster resilience and sustainable development in the Himalayan region. Professor Nusar has very nicely presented a case study of GLOF in Ladakh. And not only Ladakh, but entire western and eastern Himalayan region is very, very vulnerable to GLOF, we all know. And he has also highlighted what way we need to plan our infrastructure, what kind of considerations are there. So I'll not touch into that, but I would simply draw attention of the House on only three issues. One is a need for more investment in research and development as regards to disaster risk resilience and climate adaptation. Second, adopting nature-based solutions to go for disaster risk resilience. And third point I would like to make is integration of traditional knowledge with the modern science. Talking about the first point, research and development, it is a reality that the disaster risk resilience and climate resilience is still in a very nascent stage in the Himalayan region. Despite several programs and long-term projects, local communities, especially the mountain farmers and herders in the remote areas, are still very vulnerable to extreme weather events like flash floods or the hailstorms or the drought or sometimes flash floods and cloudbursts and so on. And our ability to foresee such events, despite the modern tools and the technologies, like we are talking about artificial intelligence, machine learning, and so many tools and technologies, our ability to predict simple things like cloudbursts is very limited. And this throws a big challenge, even though there are broad patterns based on research. Of course, Government of India and Uttarakhand government and all state governments in the Himalayan region have established their disaster mitigation cells and the climate change cells in the states. But I see, a lot needs to be done in terms of involving the citizen science and the local communities in collecting long-term data. In fact, the number of weather stations in the Himalayan region is still below the desired level. There are, in many areas, there are definite gaps in the climate stations. And we do not have long-term data so that we can model, predict such events. So such things, I would like to say that when we come to, establishing center of excellence in the climate research or the disaster resilience, of course, Government of Uttarakhand is very much, it has recommended, as indicated by Honorable Chief Minister during the inaugural session. He has indicated establishment of such a center of excellence for the Himalayan region in the state of Uttarakhand. That such a center would certainly need a very, very integrated approach, and also it will require expertise from all over the world so that we fast forward the disaster mitigation and early warning systems have to be developed. So that is one important point I would like to make. Now, second point I would like to highlight is the need for nature-based solutions to climate resilience. all over the world, different international and national agencies have time and again stressed the need for emphasizing the role of nature-based solutions, not only for biodiversity conservation, also for climate change mitigation and adaptation. And as our session chair in the beginning said that, the adaptation to change, not only for restoring the natural ecosystems, but also meeting the needs for present as well as future generations will be very, very important. We know that Himalayan ecosystems are degrading very, very rapidly. I remember one famous astronaut a few years ago. He had traveled across the Himalaya from the space. He says that over 30, 40 years, the Himalayan region has become more dusty, smoky, and a lot of aerosol has deposited. As a result, it is bound to have faster glacial melt as well as a lot of disasters. So what are we going to do to, restore such ecosystems? And we know that restoring these ecosystems as well as avoiding desertification, avoiding forest fires, and also and also going for green economy, green roads and green infrastructure, green industries are the part of nature-based solutions. We need to think very hard on those issues, and we need to involve local communities in implementing these plans which are based on nature-based solutions. And lastly, I would like to underline the need for integrating traditional wisdom and capacity of rural mountain communities with the modern science for disaster risk resilience and climate resilience. Dr. Mark Nusser also had also pointed out that local knowledge and their ability to cope up with such things is very, very important. Quite often we assume, I'll just take 2 minutes. Quite often we assume that local people do not know much, and it is we, city-bound people who have studied a lot of theory related to disaster and so on, we will be able to teach the local communities how to mitigate and how to adapt, for the coping with the disasters. But we know there are hundreds of examples in the Himalayan region where the local knowledge, local communities, wisdom, and the age-old wisdoms have come in the rescue of such disasters. If you take for example, flood areas or the glacial areas or hailstorm areas, but of course, with the modern tools and the technology, if we integrate the local knowledge as well as the modern science, we can do faster, resilience recovery, as well as we can possibly, learn from the local people. And lastly, I would say that in all these areas I have spoken here, innovation, collaboration, and communication, 3 things which are the pillars of this present Congress, they will become handy in every case. And with this, I will stop here and thank the chair for giving me this opportunity. Thank you all.
Thank you, Professor Rawat, for giving a nice overview on this aspect. Now, may I request Dr. Deepak Malikji, our DRM specialist, World Bank representative.
I have 5 minutes, yes. Distinguished guest, Dr. Chauhan, Dr. Prema, Dr. Singh, Dr. Kumar, all the panelists, ladies and gentlemen, very good morning to all of you. I'm privileged to be here to be able to speak on sustainable development and resilience in Himalayas. As representing the World Bank, I think the first and foremost thing for all of us, whether in India or in other institutions, we all work for the development. We are here to eliminate poverty and boost prosperity in a livable world. And that is, when we talk about livable world, we are talking about resilience. We are talking about ensuring that we we ensure that zero carbon, net carbon it becomes a reality one day. But before I, go into details, I think I would first like to congratulate Government of India, Government of Uttarakhand and other states in the way we have started managing disasters. In last 20 years, we have seen a big transition from the time when we started looking at the disasters. And I remember that we have now NDMA, we have now National Institute of Disaster Management, we have the SDMAs also now, and we have Institute of Disaster Management, one is national, and then now the regionals are coming up. We are also going to see a very big one, Himalayan Institute of Disaster Management very soon, about which our Honorable Chief Minister also talked about. NDRF, SDRFs, and there is a lot more to talk about what we have seen in the last 2 or 3 decades in terms of disaster management. And there is a clear visible result out of it, which we have seen. There was a super cyclone in Odisha in 1990s, and the level of casualties at that time, and recently when cyclone happened in Odisha, the stark difference between the number of casualties which have happened, we can proudly say that we have come a long way, and we now see much lesser casualties than before. So bravo to all of us. But having said that, I would like to say that yes, we have still a long way to go, and there are few good pilots which in India we have done and which requires replication and also put to use. For example, there is a recent State Disaster Rescue Force training campus which has come up in Uttarakhand, and there is a big possibility for use of that institution for trainings all across. Then there are examples like mathematical flood warning models which was developed in Bihar. So yes, I think such examples, such pilots require replication. And there are areas which still require some more work. For example, what Dr. Rawat was talking about, the meteorological network, which is yet to be expanded, which is not yet providing the required location-based information which is required for early warning for, and also there is a lot of work which requires an early warning dissemination. And also I think there is a big scope for working on making the key infrastructure seismic proof. And for example, if we look at our infrastructure, whether it is, thank you so much, whether it is in Uttarakhand or any other places in seismic regions, I think we are yet to understand how safe we are, how bad or how good we are in. And in Uttarakhand, we had the opportunity to work with the government of Uttarakhand, where I think this is a very good example where they have an inventory of 18,000 buildings for which DVA and RVA were done, and they know where they stand in terms of their key infrastructure. Similarly, I think there is still a big need for working on risk finances systems. With that, I would like to conclude that yes, sustainable development cannot be achieved without resilience, and we stand along with the Government of India and Government of Uttarakhand to work towards it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Malikji, for deliberating upon what we have done to reduce the disaster and what are the challenges ahead and how we will be able to do that. So now next go to Dr. Gauhar Meraz. He is the JSPS postdoctoral fellow from University of Japan. And yeah, he's there, right?
respected Member of Parliament, Shri Dr. Muna Singh Chauhanji, Chair of the session, Co-Chair of the session, and other dignitaries on the dais. Thank you very much, and good morning to all of you. Basically, I'm an Indian, proud Indian. Before moving to Japan, I was working as a scientist here. So I thought it is better to just set a forum here to share my experiences as a researcher being in India and a researcher being in Japan. So this whole idea, because Professor Nusser has already given us some idea how as a researcher we do research and how intricacies there are involved and how deep we go and then how we come up with the final results. So I will be just giving you an idea what we have done so far when I was here and still I'm doing there, and what are some gaps we can fill in, and in which government of our worthy government has to help us a lot, and so that because resilience and adaptability is the final. Our research is only valuable when it is being implemented at the ground. That is the most important part. We do any research, but if it is not implemented and the common people are not being helped by it, our research, then I think the research is not serving its purpose. So this is the problem we are facing right now in Himalayas. We saw the Gulf, we saw the in Shimla landslides. I am showing here a picture of the Delhi floods because I have a story for it next in some slides. So briefly, I will be discussing my own experiences in working in this field, and now what I have seen in my lab, and then what are the summary and how we can use the ecosystem services for helping us to solve the disasters. So basically, if I sum up the disaster management, I know there are many actors and many players doing a lot of roles, but just to make it very simple, there are researchers and there are the policymakers. Researchers try to know what is the problem and try to provide solutions, and finally, the most important are the policymakers who have to implement it. So as far as the research is concerned, I was part of a research in Kashmir Valley where we located some of the dam sites. We know in 2014 there was a massive flood in in Kashmir. So I was associated in a research where we located some of the dams. If they could have been there, this much of volume would have been stored, and it could have led us to have a very basin lag time would have increased, and it would have given us some early warning management strategy at the end. I was also part of a research which we done on the national highway from Jammu Srinagar, where we just made a landslide early warning system, and we found that ambient soil moisture is a very important parameter. If we have the real-time ambient soil moisture data available at certain locations, we can forecast the landslides using some machine learning tools. And I'm also associated with the Brahmaputra Basin, where we mapped the whole area of the Brahmaputra Basin, whole Brahmaputra Basin, and provided flood susceptibility mapping using a lot of machine learning tools, and then we did some ensemble. And I'm not going into the technical details, I'm just giving you an overview that as a researcher, how much we do. That is the question. That is and regarding the Delhi floods, although it does not come maybe directly related, but I was associated with the work where we found that the recurring Delhi floods is basically one of the main causes of it is the increased imperviousness of the landscape. That is causing the Delhi floods. This has a story with Japan. I'm just going to that. So all this work, everybody is doing research, and finally, does this find the takers? That is the most important thing. And what I showed, I know there are lot of people doing the same research, and there is redundancy also. There's a redundancy. I'm doing the same work, that is doing the same work, everybody is doing the same work. For a policymaker, it's very difficult to understand whose work to take. Yes, 1 minute, I will just... So as a policy maker, he has to finalize and implement it. Just to make my point, I just want to give you my experience of my lab in Japan. My lab is directly associated with government of Japan, and Agriculture Department of Agriculture, they have an issue of land abandonment, and they told my professor, let us solve this issue. We came up with similar professors, and we provided this solution to the government, and they implemented. Just simple, streamlined, focused work. Tokyo is the largest city in the world. It has the population which has the whole Canada. Canada population, it is said that Canada has the same population which only the Tokyo has. But if you will see the stormwater drainage system and how they manage the stormwater, it is amazing to see. This solution, if you will see, my hydrology people will know that they have different type of macadamias available on the roads, and porous infiltration, which infiltrates, our water infiltrates over that. So this is a solution provided by the scientists. So we have a huge workforce available in our country as a research institute. So cannot we use this workforce for finding solutions together? This is the most important. Streamlining their efforts and reduce the redundancy. We already have less amount of GDP available for research, only 6.65%, while in Japan it is 3.65%. So we have least resources, financial resources. I know we have other important works to do, but can't we use an efficient system to streamline the research and reduce the redundancy? So the need is government must entangle the rigorous mechanisms and provide solutions at a fast pace. Just to give you an example, I'm very sorry to say, I needed 1 million instrument in my lab. I asked my professor, on the third day it was on my table. Because they have a lab which has a credit card. They bought the equipment from the credit card, very simple. So this is how the things can be. If we want really on-ground solution, we have to give power to the researcher. We have to provide powers to the researcher. I really congratulate Professor Durga Pant-ji, who said that we will be having a National Institute for Disaster Management in the Himalayas for a Himalayan course. Because that very institution can serve as a bridge between the researchers and the policymakers. It can provide the solutions and taking the researchers.
Professor Mehraj,
yes, sir. I will continue. I will finalize. So as a researcher, I need to provide decision makers an option that why you are doing this and why you should not do. For that, ecosystem-based disaster risk reduction is very important, as our worthy guest already told you. In Kashmir, we already did this thing, and if anybody has any questions, I can then, in summary, policy-oriented research in disaster management through a bottom-up approach is needed at the moment. We must strengthen and channelize energies and expertise of the huge workforce we have at the research institutions in our country. We can use case studies from other parts of the world to help us deal with the issues. Lastly, but I will end with this, climate change is rapid. Our adaptation and resilience building must be rapid. In this, our government has huge responsibility on its shoulders. Thank you very much. These are some of the people who were associated with all of the works I showed. And in Japanese, we say arigatou gozaimasu. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mehraj. I think you have given a very interesting perspective on the need for focused research and the importance of research in decision-making and implementation. Now, I would like to invite Professor Ashish Pandey, the Head of Department of Water Resources Development and Management, IIT Roorkee. Is Professor Pandey here? No. Okay, then we can go to the next panelist, Dr. Paramesh Banerjee, the Director of Prayuki Geomatics from Singapore.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, and the panelists, the guests, particularly Mr. Chauhan. I am really glad to see a political leader taking so much interest in disaster management. And last day I heard his talk in Wadia Institute. He's quite knowledgeable. So this is encouraging to the scientific community. I'll come right to the point because we are not having much time now. I actually belong to Dehradun. And when I started my career as a scientist at Wadia Institute of Himalayan Geology, the first thing I realized is we don't have data. I am a geophysicist. We are working on earthquake and the formation of Himalaya, tectonics, everything. So then we started generating data, but that was on an individual basis funded by Department of Science and Technology. And after that, I went to different other places, other universities, and set up scientific infrastructure in different countries, which leads to disaster management in earthquakes. So I'm a hardcore experimental people, instrumentation person. So I'll come directly to the point, So how do you go to the next slide? Okay. Okay, so the Himalayas is facing with two types of disaster originated from tectonics, which leads to earthquake, and another is global warming. And landslide is actually a mix of both. So out of this tectonics, we cannot control. It will keep on happening. We can only manage it, mitigate the effects. Global warming is, in a sense, is inevitable. It is a cycle. It keeps on working. But the problem now is we are accelerating the global warming. So we can try to reduce it. So we can manage global warming right at the source, whereas tectonic we have to manage towards the end, okay, just before and after the disaster happens. Right, so one slide on understanding tectonics. I think you all know about that. That Himalaya is basically a very dynamic system. So the India plate is moving towards north at nearly 4 centimeters per year. So this is what we did when I was in Wadi Institute. We put permanent GPS stations and measured the motion of the India and then several other places in Asia. And we found that India plate motion is 4 centimeters per year towards Eurasia, and that 4 centimeter is being consumed in Tibet and Himalaya. Out of that, Himalaya contributes to 2 centimeters per year. So the meaning of this is illustrated by a very simple fact. If you take the place from Mohand up to Uttarkashi, and you place a scale or something like that at the two ends fixed to the ground, with the time, automatically it will deform because this is shortening. So this is we call shortening. And because of deforming, the length is decreasing, which can be measured by GPS, and at a certain time it will break. When it loses the strength of the material, this is earthquake. Okay? And this earthquake cyclicity is, it has been found around 500 to 700 years. Now, what we have seen from different studies, that entire part of the Himalaya has to break like that through earthquake and adjusting it to the process. But the region between Dehradun and Kathmandu has not broken or has not experienced a big earthquake in last 500 years. And we know how much shortening is taking place. It is continuous process. So almost 10 meters of shortening has taken place, and this earthquake has to happen. That's why we keep on saying that this place is vulnerable to a big earthquake, more than 8 or so. Nobody knows when, but it is inevitable. It is going to happen. So this is coming right from the instrumental measurement, direct measurement, and there is no doubt about it. But we need more instruments. The second thing is the global warming. Now, I'm very glad to have the DG of ICMOD here. Actually, I now live in Kathmandu, and we are within 3-kilometer distance, and I never met him. So very glad to see you. Now, ICMOD is doing an excellent work in climate research. Not much on tectonics, but on climate, they are the top, and we are very glad to have them. Now, their prediction is, with the Paris Agreement, if we can achieve a 1.5 degrees centigrade of warming, 1/3 of the Himalayan glacier will vanish within next 80 years. And 1.5 centigrade is not being achieved. It is realistically, it will be 2 or maybe even more. Then 2/3 of the glacier will vanish. Now, these glaciers are feeding the Himalayan river system. You see, the Indus, Ganges, Brahmaputra together is being fed by these glacier rivers, which is coming through water, and nearly 1 billion people's livelihood depends on that. Okay, this is a food basket of not only India, but entire Asia and some part of the world also. So this deglaciation is very important. And if we lose even 50% of this water within next 30, 40, 50 years, this is a disaster on the making. We all know that. But the point is what we are going to do to manage it. So I have only 1 minute left for me. Okay, so I have two solutions. One is the mechanism to develop the infrastructure. See, this earthquake, all these things need data, the field data. We are lacking this thing. We need a systematic data collection mechanism which government can fund. It can be corporatized also, but it has to be a separate observatory type of thing, which many countries have already done. We will set up hundreds of GPS stations, seismic, thousands actually. And then for global warming, to retain the water, instead of flowing it to the sea, try to retain it as much as possible through reservoirs and dams, etc. So we have the problem, what we know, the knowledge requires the data for which we need to take an immediate step of setting up a dedicated center for data collection. This is not the job of research institute. The scientist cannot do it. Okay? This data collection needs a professional, dedicated team, and this data can go to the research institute and then they churn it out and come out with the solutions. I'd like to mention that Japan has more than 2,000 permanent GPS and seismic stations, whereas in entire Himalaya, we don't have more than 100. Okay, this is the gap what we are facing now. Another thing is that Himalaya is the topography-based thing, and we do not know the topography. We don't have a good digital elevation model. So now the technology has come, airborne LiDAR. Okay. Nepal has taken a step. Actually, we initiated it, and they have decided to cover entire Nepal with airborne LiDAR. We just completed a 20,000 square kilometer LiDAR. It gives a high resolution, high accuracy topographic map. We call it digital elevation model. So this is needed for the Himalaya, entire Himalaya, at least the Indian part of the Himalaya. So this is what is required, the topographic base map, instrumental monitoring, which will include GNSS, seismic, weather stations, airborne survey of all types, and early warning system we all talk about. Please know that without these two things on top, early warning system cannot work. Okay. Early warning system is very instrumental thing. It needs all this infrastructure plus a very good telemetry. This is another challenge. And these are the job of the professional. This has to be given to somebody who can manage a team, an institute, an observatory type of things. So this is details about what Himalayan Observatory can do. We don't have time for that. And improving water infrastructure, I mentioned that we only use only 10% of the water resources for generating electricity. So this can be tapped in. And making dams, multiple dams and reservoir can improve the flood mitigation and store the water so that it is not wasted, and also improve navigation and other things. And this shows how glaciers, this is actually taken from ICMOD report, how the glaciers are feeding most of the water resources in river system in India. So one last slide. This shows a correlation between the GDP of a country and the loss from the hazard. This I made for earthquake only, but this can be for everything. It shows that if a same magnitude earthquake occurs in different countries like America, Japan, India, Nepal, China, the loss is proportional to the GDP, or inversely proportional to the GDP. The more GDP you have, the less is the loss. Why? It is not for money, because the government has put more money in developing scientific infrastructure. So that is the point. Okay? So even if we have less GDP, the government willingness can increase the component of that income to scientific infrastructure development. So this is the final word. Two things, if we can do from this conference, one is initiate a data generation process, institutize it so that it can be done in a proper way, so it can feed all the researches. And second is develop a task force for immediate implementation of better management of water resources. So these two things I think is very important and urgent to take up. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Banerjee. I think you have clearly highlighted the risk that we are facing from the tectonic shift in the form of earthquake. I think the recent earthquake in Western Nepal is a typical example and a warning for all of us. And then also the impacts of global warming and the rapid melting of glaciers. And I would also like to acknowledge that ICIMOD has been working very closely with the Wadia Institute of Himalayan Geology. And we also look forward to working, in the coming years, working more closely with you. I have with me our chief scientist for climate, Dr. Arun Shastra. So I hope that there would be opportunity to discuss with the institute and other partners here. Thank you for highlighting also the solutions. You have not just mentioned the risk, but also came up with some solutions and some concrete recommendations. And I hope that we can take this forward. Now we have the distinct honor of inviting the Honorable MLA, Dr. Mona Chavan Singh, to share his thoughts. The political leadership, as I mentioned earlier, is very, very important. We can generate a lot of data, a lot of science, a lot of evidence, but if the political leadership doesn't support, then as already mentioned, we will not be able to implement. So, sir, you have the floor. Yeah, you can speak from here or from here.
Good morning to you all. On the dais, Chair Dr. Phema Gwatso, Dr. Navneet, Dr. Marakos, Dr. Banerjee, Dr. Gauhar Miraj, Dr. Deepak, Dr. Sen, Dr. Rawat, distinguished scientists, geologists, researchers, and officers in uniform, those who respond to the disaster mitigation, rescue, rehabilitation at the first call on ground zero, and my dear students. 3 days back on 26, when Professor Durgesh Pant invited me to pre-Congress deliberation, I was a little lost to understand what does it mean to me. And I was wondering, lest I speak some absurd things on such an august gathering. But since I'm used to speak extempore, even if I try, I can't read out a written text. So somehow I gathered courage to speak from the dais on the subject of disaster resilience and risk reduction, etc., etc. Today I'm amazed to see Dr. Phema. Large number of the speakers from the dais, they address the very same concern which I highlighted that day. What was in the center of my thought? Research, technological advancement is of no use if it is not actionable, if it cannot be implemented, if it is not adaptable. Dr. Phema, Dr. Navneet, in other words, as a political leader or as an elected servant of the society or as a part of the government or as a part of the instrument responsible for implementing any legal framework as a legislator, the immediate challenge that we face is how to implement the recommendations. Sometimes such delegations end up, making hyper scientific super engineering, as I said that day, which is far beyond the reach of the common man. And probably Dr. Gahar highlighted, if it cannot be implemented, it is good for nothing. But I'm happy to note that large number of these distinguished experts are thinking on the similar line. Recently, at the G20 leaders meet in Delhi, it achieved many milestones. It unanimously evolved a 83 paragraph resolution, and disaster resilience and disaster risk reduction has clearly been mentioned at para number 46. Not only this, the G20, New Delhi G20 Leaders Declaration and the G20 meetings in the Indian presidency, that is the Prime Minister of India, has reflected complete commitment, total commitment for accelerating the complete implementation of Sendai Declaration on DRR. When we talk of accelerating the implementation of Sendai framework on DRR, that means this needs to be correlated, collaborated. That is why at the global level, CDRI has come up and multilateral approaches and close collaboration among the world community, global governments are required. Secondly, when I was speaking to my friend, Professor Durgesh, what has been most, compelling, you might not have seen a politician of my kind, who is such a useless politician, who is not prepared to leave the dice. Otherwise, the politicians are normally in tearing hurry to go off. But I'm such a useless person that I remained stick to the dice for such a long time. Reason, for simple reason, see, when we talk of the sustainable development, sustainable development cannot be thought of without the infusion of technology, modern science, and traditional knowledge. The indigenous knowledge. Marcos, Dr. Marcos, probably I commented the same way that day or two. I'm not averse to using the modern technology, the modern scientific knowledge. But to write off the traditional knowledge, to write off the indigenous knowledge, will also lead to disastrous consequences. I always say, over the centuries, people have learned to live with the disasters, especially in the Himalayan region. I'm the resident of this Himalayan region. We witness landslides, flooding, ice breaking, glacier breaking, although not my cup of tea, discussing the science of glaciology, hydrology, geology is not my cup of tea. I'm no expert in the field. But let me give you one example. I come from a remote mountain village. what kind of a farming pattern people in the hill areas follow. They cut the terraces, make the benches, do the farming cultivation, green the slopes. Now I can ask the scientific community, is it not trench cutting? Is not terrace making? Scientifically and structurally, slope stabilization process? It is. Because it cut down the runoff conditions of the water. As the slope increases, the water that comes down gusses with more and more speed because of the gravity, as we all understand. So by cutting the terraces, they have been reducing the slopes and reducing the water runoff conditions. So this needs to be encouraged. This needs to be built into the planning process. I don't remember exactly the name, Dr. Pema. Someone from the dais mentioned that land use should be precisely as per the terrain. Land use should be precisely as per the terrain. Therefore, because the core to today that in fact attracted me, that allured me to come and sit here for a longer time was the sustainable development. Sometimes what happens is, people talk lopsided. They'll either talk of the environment protection, completely ignoring the livelihood of the people, or they talk of the material development, completely ignoring the environment, geology and hydrology and, risk of disaster. I believe both are not practically possible. We are the native of the Himalaya. We have to live here. We can't run away. We cannot migrate altogether. So best way is to live with it. How to live with it is a matter of concern for all of you. Therefore, I think the time has come. Even we talk about the IHR, Indian Himalayan region. And so is the case with rest part of the world. See, disaster is not just earthquake or flooding. Forest fire is another menace. Depleting water sources is a future disaster. If you go to the deep forest areas, water sources are fast depleting. How to ensure the recharging of the water resources? Because if the water resources and the gravity is not available, it is not possible to live in the mountain area. It is simply not possible to pump water everywhere, every nook and corner from the downstreams. So gravitational flow, the gravity source of water, Dr. Singh, because Himalayan Institute, World Institute of Himalayan Geology is a home to, all such experiences. So this needs to be done. I have always been talking even in the legislature also. Dr. Pena, Dr. Navneet, I have been talking even in the legislature. There is a great need to prepare an atlas of the water springs in the forest areas. Water rushes down into the streams. How to ensure that the water retention capacity of the mountain increases? Be it in the form of a glacier, or be it in the form of a water that trickles down the mountains around the year and comes out in the form of a spring. That is essential for sustaining the life there. Making a earthquake resilient building, making an infrastructure, road infrastructure that is earthquake resilient, but no drinking water, nothing to eat, no green cover, no fodder for the animal, then the life is not going to be sustainable. This is not going to be a sustainable model. So, sustainability, that is why probably the Prime Minister of India, who is a great, great visionary, he talked at every possible global forum how to save Mother Earth. Mother Earth is mother to all of us. How to do it? One more thing, so far as Indian Himalayan region is concerned, and not only the Indian Himalayan region, even the other mountain areas also concerned, see, there has been a lopsided focus on certain crops alone. Millets, which used to be a superfood, as the Prime Minister of India said. The variety of seeds in the mountain areas are largest in number. But the variety of seeds are fast depleting. Because our focus is entirely on increasing the volume of agriculture produce. Hybrid seeds. As a result, the native seeds of edibles, even the wild edibles, which is a source to many edibles, that is fast depleting. There is a need to conserve it. I know before the chair, Soumya red card, I feel extremely delighted, honored, satisfied to be associated with this huge 6th World Congress on disaster management. Before it is too late, it is time to address all these fundamentals. Before it is too late. Never ever. I have studied a basic science. I have a master's in physics. I served with the Defense Research and Development Organization for 4 years. I am doing a political research now, but no amount of research can completely substitute the relevance of the indigenous knowledge. Indigenous knowledge, be it about farming, be it about water conservation, be it about forest conservation, be it about any other, healthy practices, that has to be made part of, our, the declaration that emerges from Dehradun WCDM declaration. I hope I can secure this kind of assurance from Professor Durges, the convener of the WCDM, the chair and the co-chair of this session. And indeed, I'm sure this WCDM is going, Dehradun Declaration is going to serve long way in in creating a disaster resilience and DRR in the days to come. Thank you very much.
I just want to Thank you very much. I think that was truly inspiring. And I just want to say there is hope. There's hope for all of us, all the mountain communities, mountain states, and mountain countries, when we have politicians like the Honorable MLA here. So he deserves a big, big clap. I think he didn't talk as a politician. I think he shared his wisdom with us. No, he spoke like a scientist turned into a politician, which is what we need. We need to now have politicians talking science so that we can deliver. Yes. So I was a scientist turned politician, so I was correct. So that is, thank you very much, sir. That was truly powerful. And I will not be able to capture all that you have said, but you have touched on everything. And I think the commitment to the Sendai framework on disaster risk reduction itself is a huge thing. And from ICIMOD, the International Center for Integrated Mountain Development, we are committed to support the state as well as the government of India in anything that we can do to support the recommendations from this conference. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. Thank you so very much, sir. I take this opportunity to welcome Dr. Ranjit Sinha, the Secretary for State on Disaster Management. Sir, welcome to the Congress. Now I would like to request Professor Durgesh Pant to kindly take away from here, and distribution of a memento and shawl. I would like to request Honorable Secretary of the State to kindly grace the dais for this. And sir rightly said that we need to strike a balance between technology and economy. Sir.
See, we have this extremely rare blend of people around, because from legislation to scientists to policy makers, so we have experts from all around, all across, and Shri Munna Singh, yes, Secretary DMMC, kindly facilitate Shri Munna Singh Chauhan sir. And also to the chair, please bring it fast. Dr. Pema. Yes. Thank you, Dr. Pema, for chairing the session, and ICIMOD is doing wonders, especially in this. Co-chair, Dr. Navneet Kumar. And Dr. Kalachan Sen, the co-chair. Please make it fast. Dr. Marcus. Dr. Marcus, please. And Dr. Rawat. Then we have from the World Bank, Dr. Malik. Dr. Meraz. Dr. Meraz. And Dr. Banerjee, please. Dr. Banerjee. And one, may I request all of you for a group picture, please. Group photograph. You be there. See, Chauhan Sahab, we have been talking about economy, ecology, technology, sustainability, accountability, and from the whole world, I mean, all the experts are around. So we are extending a warm invitation to all the delegates for a gala dinner tonight, and this is from our Chief Minister's office side. So Honorable Chief Minister will be there. So you all are invited at 7 o'clock this evening. So it is from this side, right? Thank you very much, sir. Thank you. A big thank you to you all. We are starting. And I would like to thank all the delegates, all the experts, all of you, and especially Shri Munna Singh Chauhan, our chair, co-chair, all our panelists. Thank you, and a big thank you to you all for making this panel a huge, huge success. Thank you. It is indigenous. Blend-based. Thank you so very much. So our next plenary starts now, and 15 minutes from now. 10 minutes break for the tea. And then this plenary is on capacity building, local to global. And the chair, Professor Surekha Dangwal, Vice Chancellor, Doon University, Professor Anil K. Gupta, co-chair Dr. Subrat Sharma from Ladakh, co-chair Mr. O.P. Singh, former DG NDRF, keynote Ms. Barbara, panelist Dr. Iftikhar K. Ahmed, Mr. Esmin Torres, Dr. Sanjay Srivastava, and Dr. Akhilesh Sojan, and Brigadier Upendra Pal Singh. So the next session starts in 10 minutes from now. Thank you. आगे हैं प्लेनरी 5 में आने वाले हैं बस मैं ग्रीन रूम में बिठाऊंगा फिर ऊपर बिठाएंगे उनको ना ऊपर बिठा देंगे हाँ So we will have the honor of Lieutenant Governor from Andaman Nicobars in our plenary 5 also, so there he will be a chief guest. session is there is an all-important session from the grassroots. It is Voices from the Grassroots. It's an important session. Voices from the grassroots, and people and communities from all around. And post-lunch it is at the same venue. So 2:30 it is, 2:30 it will start. So there it is, Voices from the Grassroots. It will take place here and at the same venue. So please be around. And Honorable Chief Minister will be around. He will be here for the dinner, for the gala dinner. So all are requested to be here at 7 o'clock. All media persons, welcome to the WCDM, and looking forward to an active participation from your side, because tomorrow we are coming up with this Dehradun Declaration.
Mic check, hello. Please, the presenters of the next plenary, if you have any PowerPoint presentation, may I request you to give it here? The interviews khatam ho gaya. Now they can put on the mic. Hello, mic check. Yes. May I request the volunteers to come? Please, you must be here. Volunteers, please. Please take the place here in the ground. May I request you all to take seats. We will start this plenary session in a while. We are running late by a few minutes. May I request all the volunteers there, please request the people to come inside, our delegates to come inside, please. Okay, may I request everyone to please be seated. We will go start the session in 1 or 2 minutes, please. Request the volunteers to be here ready. Please. The next plenary, plenary 5, is about to begin. Requesting our volunteers to bring all the delegates back in. from the open areas. Please, please, kindly be seated. This is a very important session. So much of science has come to the room. We need to talk about building capacities to adopt, apply this science in real life. Please, would you mind taking the chairs? May I request you? Our volunteers are waiting to bring up already you have come up, wonderful. Professor Anil Gupta, who is the head of the capacity building unit in National Institute of Disaster Management, is already there. Dr. Subrat Sharma ji, we have Ms. Barbara Garcia, very welcome. And we have Dr. Iftikhar Ahmad, please come. Mr. Esteban Torres, Dr. Akhilesh Surjan, Brigadier Upender Pal Singh ji. Also we have Ms. Safia from Kashmir. Ms. Safia from Kashmir. Would you please come up? Safia ji, where are you? Request our dignitaries and delegates to be kindly seated. Please call him. Let him sit in the front. Please. Up into. Please, can I request you all to please take your chairs, if you don't mind. Request you all to come to the front rows as much as possible. Come in the front. Excellent. So we are going to start right away, and we have an eminent panelist here, and with Professor Anil Gupta chairing the session. Professor Anil Gupta, over to you, sir.
So very good afternoon and welcome to the Plenary 5 of the World Congress on Disaster Management. A very important theme of this discussion today, that is on capacity building. If we recall, since the inaugural, the issues of capacity building has been flagged by the Honorable Chief Minister as well as the UN Coordinator General of India. And I think this particular plenary session is going to look into certain nitty-gritties of the capacity building that are very, very, very important. This panel is very, very specific because it draws a wide range of expertise across the globe. We have two co-chairs with me, myself as chairperson of the session, Professor Anil Gupta. With me, the two co-chairpersons are also learned experts in the subject and a vast journey of contributions. Dr. O.P. Singh, so Mr. O.P. Singh, who has been the Director General of NDRF. And during his tenure, in fact, the NDRF Academy was conceptualized, and we had a long inning of working together during his period as well. So he is one of the co-chair. And the another co-chair is Dr. Subrat Sharma. He is Dean of Research at the University of Ladakh, and a long inning of working on mountains, mountain geology, mountain environment, mountain-related disasters. Then we have 6 panelists. The keynote speaker is Miss Barbara Gracia. She is from the Cultural Heritage Resilience Expertise from France. We have the panelist from Australia, University of Newcastle, Dr. Iftikhar Ahmed. We have Ms. Esteban Teres from the Ministerial Advisor in the Ministry of Urban Development and Housing from the Ecuador. From Thailand, under the United Nations, SCAP, the head of Disaster Risk Reduction Division, Dr. Sanjay Srivastav. He will also be joining. He will join virtually. Dr. Akhilesh Urjan from Australia. He is a senior professor at Disaster Management Department of the Charles Darwin University. We'll also be joined by Brigadier Upendra Pal Singh from Indian Army. And a special speaker, we have invited a young colleague, Ms. Sophia from Jammu Kashmir. She is a district disaster management officer. To our privilege, we also have the Lieutenant Governor of Andamans joining this particular session. So we're very happy, and we feel honored with his presence in this particular session. And this shows that how the theme of capacity building is important. In fact, the islands of Andaman, we have always been getting significant ideas, requests, and experiences of capacity building interventions despite of being a very small piece of land. So that also brings a lot of good case studies. So as an opening remarks, I have just 2 or 3 very small points to say, and then we'll be requesting the panelists to share their thoughts. When we are talking about capacity building, I think this is also a time that the efforts are past 30 years or more in the area of disaster risk reduction capacity building globally, and particularly in the Asia Pacific, needs a very, very serious revisit. And revisit that what we could achieve and what we could not, and still we have to work through the concerted efforts to achieve those. And basically, what do we find? That in the area of policies, almost all the nations of the world, we are good in developing policies and institutional framework. Most of the countries could develop very good legislations and also institutional setup. But if we look at the local level, I find that everyone believes that there is a lot of gap. And the gaps are very complex. And that is the reason the theme of capacity building today is also reflecting upon that how do we link local to global. So when we think from a policy perspective, many times the focus is more on that how the policies are framed and how the policies need to be translated. But when we talk about local to global, it's the reverse. So basically how the feedback at the local level and how the needs at the local level, how the strengths at the local level need to be monitored and integrated with the global policy process. So it's a two-way process. And that is the reason now we say that we need a significant convergence between the top-down as well as the bottom-up approach. Both are important, but a perfect balance, perfect blend is needed. The second point that I would like to emphasize here, that during the journey of 3 decades or more in capacity building for disaster risk reduction, globally and more particularly in the countries, taking example of India, we could develop a lot of expertise in the area of disaster management. But if we just go to a district or taluka, and if we try to find out that do we have some people, some expert in a district who can help us conducting risk and vulnerability assessment, who can help us conducting or developing disaster management plan? I think that becomes a challenge, and then we find a highly undulating terrain. In some districts, in some places, we find good number of experts, and some districts, we find that there is a huge gap. So I think we will have to see that how this undulating terrain need to be balanced, and we create local level expertise as well. I think that's very important, because our capacity building strategies in the past have created more preachers than the real doers. And during the disasters, we find the real people who can really take the task in their hand and say, okay, we are able to develop this plan, we are able to carry out risk assessment, we are able to demonstrate that how the operations need to be carried out. So basically, the Honorable Prime Minister's call that focus on skills, focus on training, I think that's very important. And the third aspect of capacity building comes from India's leadership initiative at the global level. India's initiative, more particularly, for example, through the initiative of Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure. In fact, day before yesterday, there was a very special session organized by CDRI here for resilient infrastructure for mountain areas. And there, basically, what kind of expertise we need to develop at local level, because difficult reaches in the mountains, we can't bring the experts always from the outside. We need to create people who have knowledge and expertise at the local level. Another initiative, the special working group on disaster management created under the G20. That is the first time in the history of G20, it was India's leadership initiative. But India's leadership initiative also looks at a two-way cooperation, that India learns from other countries' experience and India shares its own experience to help the other countries. And basically, this two-way cooperation process is very, very important in capacity building as well. So we are able and we are open to collaborate globally, whether it is a South-South cooperation, whether it is a cooperation with the developed nations, whether the cooperation within the Asia-Pacific, we are taking this kind of initiatives. So I hope that today's panel is going to throw significant light on the subject and also help identify the critical points where we need to work in improving the environment of capacity building globally, and more particularly at the national level, within India, within other countries which are participating in this forum, and otherwise also which are affected by multiple hazards. So with this, I would like to welcome all the panelists on the dais. And the strategy of this panel is like this, that I'll be inviting the panelists one by one to share their thoughts, and the timelines for each panelist, we have thought that maybe we speak around 8 minutes each. And then at the end, I will be requesting Dr. O.P. Singh Sahab to provide a summary and the key points that are emerging from the deliberations of the panelists. And my colleague, Dr. Subrat Sharma, I will be requesting him to help identify the topics or the points that are emerging for the future takeaways. So with this, I would be inviting the first speaker of the session, Ms. Barbara Gracia. She is coming from France, so a long journey. So let us welcome her with loud applause.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Chair, Co-Chair, fellow speakers, and thank you particularly to the organizer for this invitation in this important and high-level event. The presentation. Oh, no, it's not here. Apologies, problems of the direct. Well, in the meantime, when we found the presentation, I would like to share with you that I recently joined the private sector but most of my professional career has been with the World Bank, GFDRR, that is the Global Facility for Disaster Reduction and Recovery, and UNESCO. So my presentation today is a bit changing. I will go from global to local and share some experiences with you. Well, hopefully, I will illustrate my speaking. In the meantime, I would like to start with an anecdote. Back in 2015, I was working with the World Bank in the CAPRA program. CAPRA stands for Central America Probabilistic Risk Assessment. And it's a methodology and a tool with different modules for different hazards to build capacity on a specific calculation, probabilistic calculation for the specific hazard in a specific context. So we were doing this technical capacity in all the Central American countries, and we also developed a workshop at regional level. And the anecdote that I want to share is at the end, one of the participants came and told me, I'm surprised with the results. I knew we have facing risk, but I didn't know that we have this level of risk. And he was worried. He was telling me how if we that work on disasters are not that much aware of the risk that we are facing, how are we going to communicate and to explain this to local communities, to people who are not working on this field? And this is why, for me, I would say that the first step for capacity building is understanding and communicating risk. I think my images are arriving. That one, yes. No problem. Thank you so much. Yes, so that is me. How do I change? Sorry? Okay. Okay. So I already shared with you my anecdote about the CAPRA program and how this concern about how communicate the risk. And as I was saying, I think the first step to create capacity, to increase capacity, is understanding and communicated risk. So one of the recurrent questions that I have is how to make people, not technical people, not disaster people, understand what is risk. And one example could be using cartoons. Why not? This helps people to understand a difficult concept in an easy way. Or another possibility is using examples. The table that you see in the screen came from a publication that we developed with the World Bank about the Japanese expertise in disaster risk management for cultural heritage. So explaining specifically how do we identify risk with examples from the culture sector help other colleagues to understand better and increase their awareness about what risk is and how can we reduce it. In the context of this program, with the experience of Japan, we organized several capacity building workshops, and one was in Bhutan, and we bring Japanese expertise there. And it was very successful because despite being different kind of heritage, you can always find the common ground and the similarities. And in this case, the main concern of the Bhutan team was fire risk. And if you remember the zone that was almost practically gone in 2012, so they could learn from the Japanese expertise in reducing fire, because actually it's one of the main concerns, excuse me, of Japan, that his cultural heritage is mainly made of wood and paper and vegetables material, so fire is one of the main concerns. So they have created a lot of expertise around, and sharing experience with other countries was very helpful and successful. Another example that I want to bring is Uzbekistan. We developed a capacity building with a multidisciplinary team, And yesterday was mentioned the importance of develop cross-sectoral collaboration, and I want to emphasize that. Indeed, it's very rich to bring people from different disciplines exchanging different experience. In this case, we have teams from the cultural heritage sector, tourist sector, and disaster risk management. And it was very interesting to see how they never had spoke with the other before. The disaster risk management people didn't think about the tourist sector. Tourist people never thought on disaster before. So it was very rich to make this learning exchange between all. And I brought as an example the tourist sector because sometimes it doesn't come quickly to the mind of disaster risk management professionals. Sometimes we focus more on health, educational sectors. And tourism is very tricky because there is the challenge that sometimes they are a bit reluctant about talking about disasters. I got a conversation with a colleague in the past that told me, no, I don't want to talk about risk and disaster because I want to promote tourism. So if I talk about disaster, I scare people. So this is exactly what we need to avoid. People need to understand that managing risk is the way to be secure, not avoiding the conversation. And an example from the tourist sector that I wanted to bring is from central Italy. This is the city of Norcia. It's a hotel in an area that is very earthquake prone. And in the hotel, when you arrive, you have information about seismicity and how to react in case of an earthquake, explaining that the building is secure, that you have safe areas, as you see marked with a note. And this way, you create capacity in the people visiting on how they react and trying and ensuring that the people in the hotel is well prepared, is going to assist visitors. And this is the way that you communicate risk, not avoiding the conversation. And bringing climate change into the equation, we face another challenge. Sometimes there are some countries, some people that still are a bit reluctant of accepting that climate change is a reality that we know very well, but some people still is difficult to communicate with them. And I'm using this example to emphasize the in situ training. Particularly with climate change, it's very useful for people to see the reality and what is happening. And the example that I wanted to bring today comes also from Italy. This is Cinque Terre. And actually this park, cultural park, became a UNESCO World Heritage Site some years ago, and is based on traditional knowledge. I was very happy to hear in the previous session how traditional knowledge was emphasized. This park is formed, as you see, the town is in the middle of mountains, and the mountains were construct terrace with the technique of dry stone walls to do agriculture in the past, and then was abandoned. And now the program is trying to recover this as a sustainable and resilient practice, and recover all the area, restore the dry stone walls, and promote resilience and sustainability. And there was a workshop last April organized by the ICROM, and the program is called Net Zero, Heritage for Climate Action, and actually will be a special technical session in the afternoon. And it brought 5 teams from different countries to learn how this Cinque Terre park works, and to interact directly with the local community there, exchange their experiences, and learn from each other how to, through traditional knowledge, we can adapt and mitigate climate change. And engaging with the communities is another recurrent question. How can we make it more easy to understand, to identify risk? And coming back as the beginning of my presentation, one very useful tool is think out of the box, and instead of focusing in serious presentation, make fun activities. Such, for example, the disaster imagination game that helps community to look around a map and identify the areas of risk, and together with the different stakeholders, look for solutions. So to not extend much and going to my conclusions, I would repeat that the importance of understanding and communicated way in a safer way. Again, try to promote multidisciplinary workshop, try to bring people from different areas to promote knowledge exchange, discussion, and find different aspects. And then from this point of global going to local, keep always in mind that to adapt the global solution, we need to understand very well the local context, and particularly if there is some knowledge in there, make the community feel empowered with this and start creating all the resilient facilities around their own knowledge. And one thing that I wanted to mention to finalize, language is important. And when we are trying to communicate risk with people not familiar, sometimes when we say natural disaster, that I hear yesterday sometimes, we create the sense that if there is natural, we cannot do anything about it. And this is exactly the opposite that we want to convey. So I'm following this international campaign on non-natural disaster to try to avoid calling disaster natural, because they aren't. So if you agree, I invite you to follow and stop saying disaster are natural. And that is all from my side. Thank you so much. And thank you. Looking forward to the rest.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Barbara. And I think this is very critical aspect of capacity building. And I recall that 2009 when Paris was flooded and the issues of communication. So basically, you highlighted on risk communication. So there is another way like safety communication as well. And I think this is very important component. And in India also, we experienced that how the success in dealing with major cyclonic storms, how communication has really contributed. And whether it is any kind of challenge or whether it is 100% success, communication plays a vital role in any kind of disaster. So thank you. And now we'll move to our panelist, Dr. Iftikhar Ahmed, who is coming from the University of Newcastle in Australia. Australia also has a lot of climatic hazards, more particularly, and the lot of experience they bring in using modern technologies, mapping technologies. So over to you, Dr. Iftikhar.
While they're loading up, just to introduce, so respected chairperson and co-chairs and my fellow panelists and my fellow participants at the Congress. So good afternoon to you. So thank you. Now I actually, Mr. Chair, I will not talk about Australia today. I will talk about, I think, some of the experiences in, if you accept the term, the Global South. Can we please have the presentation? Hope you won't deduct it from my 8 minutes. That's great. So I will be talking about this, the hands-on approach, and I am actually an academic, as you already noted, and being an academic, our only opportunity, the interface with communities, is to action research. And that is a paradigm which is often contested in the real traditional ivory tower form of research, but perhaps, I can convince you that it is also a valid form of research and gives us knowledge and understanding. So this is a kind of drawing I did to pull together some of the key ideas behind this participatory development philosophy espoused by many of these authors, chambers, etc. But basically, the key message from this is to integrate, to synthesize global and local knowledge and come up with solutions to address some of the pressing problems and issues in certain contexts. I won't go through this, but just to highlight two very important things. In this whole process, one thing is very important is listening instead of talking. I'm sorry, we are all trained as talkers, but we have to learn to speak, learn to listen as well. The other one is also, it's about learning. It's not about lecturing, not telling people what to do. When you talk about capacity building, it's also mutual learning. It's a two-way process of learning. That is the main philosophy behind this. And perhaps the other one is also to be able to relax and have fun and not lose your sense of humor. That way, you build up the bonds and the connections with communities. So that is the point, and I will move on to the next one. So I'll give you two very quick case studies. And that's the theory. The theory is over now. So the case study, the first one, this is a training of trainers action research project. So we try to combine different streams. There's the training of trainers, and then there's an action research where we try to do it in Fiji and focusing on leadership for women in disaster resilience. So I won't go through it in great detail, just to tell you that women in many of these contexts are actually true leaders. They actually make all the household level decisions and even community level decisions. And so we kind of wanted to piggyback on this existing, resource, I guess that's the word. And so the way we actually did it, we couldn't do it directly, of course, because we are from the University of Newcastle, our team. So we had to consult with the local stakeholders, get them on board, starting from the top ministries to the grassroots village communities. And so once we did that, we did a training of trainers workshop. They trained the trainers, and the trainers went to the village, and they ran the training for the village women and others, and we supported them in that process. So this is the basic idea, and to learn from that process and build up our own knowledge base. So that's the first one, the TOT, and I won't go into in great detail. All these trainers were trained, including men. I mean, every time people talk about gender, gender is not only about women's welfare. Gender is about the relationship between the different genders, which I believe there are more than 64 persuasions. So having said that, no, I'm digressing, so I won't go there. And in the second stage, what we did was we actually did the training in the village, and you can see the police women running the training. So there were five police women who were trained by us, and they were given a package, and then they ran the training in the village when we just supported them in the process. And it went really well. I think it sounded good. But the main problem is that afterwards, when we said that a training of trainers means the TOT is training of trainers, of trainers, of trainers, of trainers, of trainers ad infinitum. That is the ideal process. Now, if it doesn't kick off by itself, if it doesn't spark that innovation and uptake, then it's not going to go far. And this is exactly what happened because of our projects at universities and research institutions. We get confined timeframes and confined funding. So when we talked about it, we thought they'll be inspired in running it, but they said, no, we are very happy to do it, but you have to come back and maybe even fund us to do it. So I think that's one lesson, very important. The second one is in Bangladesh, and I failed to tell you that at the beginning. I'm originally from Bangladesh, and when I was working at the university there, I had this interesting project trying to improve flood resilience in rural areas. Community studies, that's the kind of stuff. So we went there and documented the community, talked to them, and understood how they live. And you can see it's a floodplain. So the houses are built on elevated mounds, but even those get flooded in extreme conditions. You can see some of the houses there, which we documented. During the floods, this is what happens. Then we had the community workshops, separate workshops for men, women, different timings, all that. I won't go into in great detail. And trying to understand the problems with their local houses and what could be done to improve that. And this kind of discussion. So, and then we did the demonstration house. We took some of those ideas on board, and we supported them, and one of the villagers volunteered to give his or her house, and we kind of worked on that to fix it and improve it. And I won't talk about all we call them BFS, building for safety options, very simple innovations, treating the bamboo, protecting the lower part of the bamboo, protecting the plinth by what we call cement stabilization. I won't go technical today, but cement stabilization is just adding 5 to 8% of cement to soil, and it stabilizes it, and that stabilizes the plinth. Normally, these plinths are made out of mud. So there you see, this is the demonstration houses that we did. We built them, improved them. We had rainwater gutters there. Sorry, I'm pointing here. Rainwater gutters there, which is also an innovation because they don't do it, and they have been drinking arsenic, arsenic-contaminated groundwater. So this is another idea. And we went back after that when we built the house and looked at them in the floods, and they were fine because we stabilized those plinths. And I'm talking only 5 to 8% cement to stabilize it. So it's totally affordable in that context. Easily done, easily replicable, using the same technologies that they use. And then we had the dissemination, we had a village bard singing and teaching their kids and all kinds of things. And so you see, and some of these people who worked with me, they were my former students, graduates, architecture graduates, and I realized that was a moment of introspection for me, because I realized that we were not training them to do anything relevant for this global south context that we live in. They were all busy designing beautiful, fancy buildings for the elite and wealthy. And so when we took them to the village, they took a trowel. They didn't know what it was. These are architectural graduates, study for 5 years, get a Bachelor of Architecture degree, and they don't know what a trowel is. So this was hands-on. So we all worked hands-on and did things. We did the construction. We're no different from the villagers, and we learned. Remember I told you at the beginning, this process is a two-way learning process. So there it is with the group. But sounds fantastic, doesn't it? Now what happened? We go there after a few years, and you see that photograph, right? This is one photograph, shows you, this one shows you the stabilized plinth. So it's fine after many years. And the next house, actually owned by his brother, he didn't follow it. So now he's, covering it with plastic and protecting it. Same. The other house below, they said, no, we don't want to stabilize it. We'll build a lower mud brick plinth just to save. So we found there are many problems. So we said, what's going on, guys? Why didn't you do it? You were all so eager, enthusiastic, you participated. What's happening? He said, yes, we'll do it again, but if you come back and give us the money. Same issue as in Fiji. So we start really encountering some of the real life issues. All these decades of doing so-called development and pumping money into society, especially after disasters, giving response and all that. And that kind of slowly eroded the local inherent resourcefulness and capacity of those people. And then they developed a patron-client relationship. The us and them started proliferating, and huge disparities, urban, rural, and even within rural communities, within urban communities, huge disparities, huge issues. And when there's this disparity, when the change agents go in to the community, it's difficult. What you get out of it? It benefits the agent more. You feel good. I've done something for the community. Yeah, I'm finishing this last slide. So my main point with this is that maybe we should do some more introspection. Maybe we can change ourselves. Maybe we can mold ourselves to the reality that surrounds us. I mean, you're here in Dehradun, right? The whole road interweaves between rural and urban. Suddenly it's totally rural, and 1 minute it's totally urban. So great disparity. So even just right here. So anyway, so we have to change, and that is all I wanted to say. And thank you very much for your attention and time.
Thank you, Professor Pushkar. Wonderful case studies. And I think we need to look at such more case studies across the smaller countries where excellent examples are emerging. So you presented few case studies, but I think this is a good idea that we identify that we can bring transformation. See, globally in DRR, we are talking about transformation. So thank you for the wonderful presentation. Now, moving to our next speaker, Ms. Esteban Torres. She is coming from Ecuador. She is the ministerial advisor in the Ministry of, I'm sorry. He is ministerial advisor in the Ministry of Urban Development and Housing. So over to you, Mr. Torres, and you have 8 minutes for your deliberation.
Well, thank you. Good afternoon with all. It's
It is a pleasure for me to share this session with you, and I thank the organizers for the invitation. Sincerely, I don't speak English very well. I'll try to do my best effort, and I prefer to read some reflections that I wanted to share with you. Next. In 2017, Ecuador faced a 7.8 earthquake. This tragedy claimed many lives, but also highlighted the advantage of bamboo as a seismic resistant building material. Both the public and private sector were interested in building houses with this material. However, interest was not enough. Much more than that was needed. The proper use of bamboo requires the participation of various actors within the different components of the bamboo production chain. In order to build with bamboo, it is necessary to have quality raw material, which is achieved through adequate management from the plantation and then combined with the processes of preservation, drying, and storage, among others. In order to build with bamboo, it was also necessary to have skilled labor which applies ancestral knowledge, but also seeks to innovate through different construction systems. But it was not enough to have skilled labor if there were no professionals trained in bamboo design and construction who applied the parameters established in the construction regulation. Nor was it enough to have professionals as architects and engineers trained if the municipalities do not apply regulation that encourage bamboo construction. All this is what has been done in Ecuador, with greater emphasis since the earthquake occurred in 2016. With the support of the International Bamboo and Rattan Organization, we have been working to strengthen local capacities together with the communities where bamboo is produced, with artisans and builders, with the private sector, but also with the universities that train professionals, with the municipalities that determine local regulations, hand in hand with the central government in the implementation of public policies. All these efforts have positioned bamboo in the construction sector in Ecuador and its potential in environmental terms continues to strengthen this image. In this context, as part of the implementation of the public housing policy, it is planned to implement housing solutions that incorporate sustainability parameters. So, the use of bamboo as a construction material is an alternative to replace the use of wood, and due to its characteristics of management and use and its low carbon footprint compared to other materials, it can contribute to the reduction of CO2 emissions. The Ministry of Urban Development and Housing incorporated among its proposals a housing design that used a bamboo as a construction material. The house complies with the Ecuadorian building regulations. To date, more than 1,300 houses have been built with this typology. Promoting an adequate use of bamboo in construction as part of the implementation of the National Habitat and Housing Policy requires the strengthening of local processes that allow for skilled labor and quality raw material. The process I have told you about constitutes the support for the construction of social housing with bamboo promoted by the ministry in Ecuador. These processes has been multiplying from the province of Manabí to the different regions of the country and currently to the different countries of the Latin American region. Is it not a recipe to be applied, but a model that recognizes local capacities as the basis of generating development? The strengthening of the sector has required the generation of synergies between different actions and actors. Local and national policies promote sustainable construction, and the sector has skilled labor and quality raw materials. The population revalues the use and exploitation of bamboo in construction, and producers are prepared to respond to demand among other strategic links. These are some reflections that I wanted to share with you today, and that I hope I will contribute to the capacity building process. Again, thank you for the opportunity, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Torres. I think this is a very good presentation that he brought, because bamboo is being considered in various countries, more particularly a large number of these smaller countries, and multiple use, not only in providing the social resilience, but several other benefits in coastal areas, in hill areas also. And this also brings an excellent example that how traditional knowledge can be integrated with the modern approaches of planning. So, and if we look back in the hilly terrains as well, we find that the bamboo houses were there. Those were considered as resilient designs. In the coastal areas also against the coastal flooding. So basically, this also gives an idea that how do we look at the modern approaches of planning and integrate the traditional understanding, and then work with the communities to bring resilience. So thank you for bringing this example here. Now the next panelist is Dr. Sanjay Srivastava. He is Head of Disaster Risk Reduction Division at United Nations SCAP, based in Thailand, Bangkok. He was supposed to join in person, but he got some injury in his leg, so he will be joining online. Hope he's already joined. Yes, we can hear you, Dr. Sanjay ji, but we can't see you. Please.
Yeah. Can you see me now?
Yes, perfectly, perfectly. So welcome on board, and over to you, Dr. Sanjay Srivastava ji.
Yeah.
And the request is for the time limit, as we have a large number of panelists. Yeah. Over to you.
Right. Sure, sir. Sure. Thank you, Professor Gupta, and my sincere apology for not being able to be there with you in person. And I realized that I'm the only person in the panel who came from the UN. So I thought I would like to share with you some UN perspective on this specific issue. So here I would like to, my key message, the first one is as the professional who are in the process of communicating the risk to the different stakeholders, we believe there are two important parts of the science which is key. One is what we call translational science. We need to translate the hazard, the science of hazard, in terms of the impact. So unless we communicate the impact to the community, to the stakeholders, to from the community of early warning to the end users, I think this is what is one of the challenge which we have been struggling. Now it's closing the gap. So the first is translational science, to communicate from risk to impact. The second part is what is called anticipation science. Anticipation science is to communicate the policy actions from hazard to risk to policy response. So risk to policy response has to be translated through anticipation science. So if we are able to communicate the risk with translational and anticipatory approaches of the science, I think we will able to bridge many gaps that exist today. Here in this context, I just wanted to cite 2-3 examples from our UN experiences. One is in 2015, there was a global focus on inequality, world becoming highly unequal, and particularly in the middle income countries, the fastest growing economies, at the same time becoming more and more unequal society. So there was variety of policy options, focus on education, health, focus on all kind of the development paradigms. But what was missing there is the disaster resilience. So we used what I said is translation and the anticipatory science. We brought out a theme study, how disaster contributes or widens the inequality by a certain percent. We did it a very analytical GCM equilibrium model. And this debate, disaster was flagged as one of the drivers of inequality, particularly in high growth middle income countries of Asia and Pacific. This attracted global attention. This year, the International Day of Disaster Risk Reduction, inequality was one of the key. So what we did, we brought this as a policy agenda from the science of anticipation and translation. My second example I would like to cite was the IPCC report, Assessment Report 6. It spoke a great deal of complex compound and cascading risk.
Dr. You are losing your voice in between. Sometimes it goes too low.
Oh, is it? Okay. Okay. Let me
yes,
try.
Now it is okay.
Okay. So the another example of the translational science was the IPCC report, Assessment Report 6. This is more relevant, particularly in a mountainous context, the theme of this WCDM. Mountainous context, disasters are often complex, compound with a cascading impact. Managing this kind of risk is always difficult. Most of our professional experiences have been managing hazard, risk, and hazard, vulnerability, and risk. But when it becomes complex, compound, and cascading, the challenges lies in making the best of the science, what we call the scenario analysis, context analysis, to suggest the policy action. The recent GLOF in Sikkim is one of the examples, the high precipitation cloudburst that triggered GLOF. Downstream, it destroyed the critical infrastructure of hydroelectric power plant, 1.2 megawatt. That is a very important asset. So we need some kind of a early warning for all type of approach. At the same time, built by resilient infrastructure as well as infrastructure for resilience coupled together. So these two approaches from translational science to anticipatory science are very. My last point is the CAP Commission session this year in 2025. There was a lot of focus on the climate action, particularly we had a session on race to zero, and that was the whole Asia Pacific voice. In race to zero, the issue of adaptation, particularly the climate change adaptation, somehow was not getting the attention that it deserves. We brought out a report called Asia Pacific Disaster Report. We brought a idea of translational science, a just transition. Just transitions not there only in energy, but it's also there in the adaptation. And the think resilience in terms of building infrastructure. So with these two policy actions, we could able to inspire a policy think tank of Asia Pacific regions to act when we talk on race to resilience. In race to resilience, adaptation with just a transition, adaptation, think of resilience is very important. So at a high level, global policy agenda is important that we as a scientific community, as academia, use translational and anticipatory science and communicate policy messages without any ambiguity, with a lot of clarity, evidence, inspire the policy decisions in different countries. So thank you, Professor Gupta. These are few words I thought I must share with my colleagues.
Thank you very much, Dr. Srivastava. You very nicely brought the UN perspective. And I think many of us are aware of the UN SCAPS initiative and jointly with many partners, RIMES and others. And UN SCAP has a special center located in New Delhi in India on science and technology. And your thoughts also sync directly with the recent initiatives in India as well. The new science, technology, and innovation policy in India. Now we are working for a DRR and climate change vertical within that how do we utilize and what is suggested that on transnational research and anticipatory research. And I think that is very important because if we have a foresight, if we understand what kind of risk we are going to meet in future, our preparedness would be much better. So thank you very much for your deliberation and being able to participate, and wish you the recovery soon, and maybe in future we'll meet you in person. So thank you. And over to the next speaker. He is coming from Australia. So this panel is very rich in the Australian cooperation with us. He's coming from Charles Darwin University, and he's leading disaster management program there. Over to you, Dr. Surjan. And this time, as for all the panelists, is for you.
Thank you very much, Professor Gupta, for welcoming me. Namaskar, Jai Hind. My name is Akhilesh Surjan. I am originally from the heart of India, Madhya Pradesh, from the city of Bhopal. I studied here in India and worked with a couple of organizations, including with the government, non-governmental organizations, as well as with the UNDP. And then since 2005, I am living overseas. For the first 10 years, I lived in Japan and worked with the United Nations University and Kyoto University. And for the last 9 years, I'm based in Australia, working with the Charles Darwin University. This is, after 10 years, I'm visiting the city of Dehradun. Last I visited was, I think, 2013, where I was invited as a lead author of IPCC to disseminate the findings of the IPCC fifth assessment report at that time. It is, I'm also very pleased to see a lot of people here in the uniform, and salute to you, everyone, each of you, for keeping us secure and safe. And also a lot of young and youth students and volunteers, I guess, in some way, they are volunteering for this conference. And my topic is about volunteering, and I'm presenting case studies from Australia and Japan, and I'm sure they are very much applicable in this part of the world as well. For the last couple of days in this conference, we have learned that disasters are getting more severe and impactful, be it earthquake or tsunami, landslide or flood or cyclone or bushfire, etc. And we are facing these risks not only increasingly intense, but also they are bringing with them compounding and cascading effects, as it is also highlighted by the previous speaker. And all the first responders who are present in this room, they will realize that they get overwhelmed with the frequency of the events which are occurring parallelly in different parts of the same country, as well as in different parts of the world. And I think we'll be hearing from the NDRF later on about how overwhelmed they get when they are, events which are occurring in different parts of the country requiring our urgent attention. And the question is, how do we develop our current DRR approaches and strategies to tackle the future risk? And what role does the society at large should be ready to play? Because our response agencies cannot take care of everyone at all the times because of the more frequent and more intense disasters. And because disasters do not know the borders, so does the volunteers. Disaster volunteers come from various walks of life. They belong to different age groups, and they serve most of the time their own community, their neighborhood, their own village, town, or city. But from time to time, they also go to serve the other cities or states within their own country. They sometimes also go internationally. So the project I did, funded by the Australia-Japan Foundation, was to capture the experiences and challenges of the volunteers in these two countries and identify areas of mutual learning and enhance sustainable volunteering pre and post disaster setting. In Japan, the volunteering system existed for over several thousand years. They have a very specific word. One is suibodan, which is water volunteer. So these are the volunteers which are well trained for responding to the flooding situations, and shobodan, which is a fire volunteer. And Kobe earthquake of 1995 was a watershed moment because of the Kobe earthquake, when people saw the images on the television, about 1.3 million people from all parts of the Japan flooded the city of Kobe to volunteer. They had no training, they had no preparedness, they had no experience. And because 1.3 million people rushing to the disaster-affected area, it has put a lot of pressure on the local resources. In Tohoku earthquake and tsunami of the March 2011, more than 500,000 volunteers served within the first 4 months. And this time, they were more organized, and the whole volunteering movement was channelized through NGOs. Use of internet was also very helpful. And then there was a Kumamoto earthquake in April 2016, where a volunteering platform was formed in partnership with the government, local government. And in the flood in Mabi in 2018, there was a volunteer center established. There were guidelines, registration system, etc. was established. So Japanese experience actually, shows us that there is a accumulated experience to manage ad hoc or spontaneous volunteers. And Japanese NGOs and local governments now are playing key role in managing the volunteers and various tasks they perform. These volunteers are mostly untrained, but some on-site training is provided by the more experienced people before the volunteers actually go and help the local communities in different things. And most of the volunteering peaks immediately after the disaster. Soon after the disaster, first week, second week, third week, there are a lot of people who want to volunteer, but the volunteering support is required over several months. And the formal or long-term volunteering is little uncommon in Japan. These are some of the photos. For example, this is evacuation shelter where people who lost their homes in tsunamis or earthquake, they are taking shelter here, and they are served by the volunteers. And you can see the volunteers are doing cleanup job. They are also serving food, and they are wearing boots, and some of the volunteers are also providing technical support in the form of laborers. In Australia, the volunteering is a way of life for many people in the community. Volunteer fire brigades were established around the middle of the 19th century, and after that, the civil defense was established in 50s, and then state emergency services were formed in each of the states. And each of these state emergency service has a very limited core staff and a large volunteer staff. But these volunteers are very formally trained. Their recruitment process is as if you are applying for a job, and you have to clear a lot of different formalities, including police clearance, security clearance, etc. And once they are there, the recruitment is done. They are also trained, and there are also a number of trainings are done on a regular basis. In the meetings, some of the volunteers are organized on a monthly basis to keep them, to retain them, to retrain them, etc., etc. However, this formal system of volunteering is seeing challenges. We had more than 400,000 volunteers in 2010, and by 2021, it is reduced to about half. And alternative forms of volunteering is emerging. For example, people would like to do digital volunteering, skill-based volunteering, etc., etc. And it is mostly happening in the post-disaster phase. Volunteers are beacons of hope, be it in Japan or Australia or any other parts of the world, but volunteering is diminishing, especially in the developed part of the world, while it is recognized that they exist in both formal and non-formal settings. So while volunteering is a fundamental for realizing the vision of community-based disaster risk reduction, we have to make volunteering trendy, and I'm very happy that these young students are volunteering at this conference, and I'm sure they will one day stand up to volunteer when the disaster strikes in their region. We have to make volunteering inclusive, and localization of volunteering is a must, and I think that is where our civil defense, state emergency services can play a major role. And we have to make volunteering a purpose of life so that people can build very strong mental and social network while by way of volunteering. And we have to invent new language and make volunteering more fashionable. And many countries are investing into it, and I'm sure in India also these kind of initiatives are taken care in the recent years. These are some of the examples from Japan where volunteering is done at the neighborhood level and it is promoted, and so does in Australia. And I'm happy to speak with you later on during the lunch or tea breaks to share more of these experiences. But thank you very much. Jai Hind.
Thank you, Dr. Surjan. And very aptly, disaster management is a shared responsibility. And when we say shared, so shared globally as well. And that is the reason conference on World Congress on Disaster Management is enabling this kind of discussion across the boundaries. And the topic of volunteering, basically that also a very good theme that has emerged over the last 10 years or so, that the countries which were primarily focusing on technology, now they also has started talking about volunteering. I recall 2014, a bilateral talk with the government of Japan delegation. And then they told that they want to learn the community-based initiatives, community-led initiatives. And that was a surprise for me that time. But now, in fact, there are a lot to learn from each other. And this is something India has also recently started, Apada Mitra, and that is one of the successful schemes we are talking about. So thank you, Dr. Surjan, for bringing excellent examples to this forum. Now over to the next panelist, Brigadier Upendra Pal Singh. In fact, Army has multiple roles in disaster risk reduction in the entire cycle. Many times we see on the media the roles in response, our roles in relief, but they also have huge role in mitigation and preparedness as well. And I also recall that Eco Task Force that was created by Indian Army to replant and revegetate the difficult terrains where normal people cannot reach. So over to Brigadier Saab for your deliberation, and the time is for you is 8 minutes.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished chair, co-chair, panelists, and august audience. It's a matter of privilege and honor for me to be speaking in 6th World Congress on Disaster Management. And I'll be dwelling on the role of Indian Armed Forces. Why I'm calling it Indian Armed Forces, because though being from Indian Army, I would be addressing the role and the contribution which has been given by all the three services, Indian Army, Indian Air Force, and Indian Navy. And before I dwell further, let me start with a caveat that I do not have those academic qualifications worth emulating as my co-panelist sitting over here and the august gathering which is there in the hall. But I have a lot of experience under the belt. Experience of physically participating in such disaster relief operations and also supervising such operations in staff. So let us first see the vulnerability profile of the nation. We as a nation, we are a vast country, 7th largest, with a very big coastline, more than 5,600 kilometers, jetting into Indian Ocean. And you name a terrain, we have it. We have deserts, we have mountainous, high-altitude areas, the plains of Punjab, riverine terrain, delta regions, salt plains of Run of Kutch, Deccan Plateau. So because of this diversity, there is a lot of adverse disasters which happen in our nation. If you see the data, out of 36 states and union territory in the country, 27 of them are disaster prone. And Indian Armed Forces, by virtue of our operational task, we are present in all nook and corners of the nation. So inadvertently, we become one of the first responders along with the affected community affected by the disaster. So let us revisit the disaster management journey as it started in India. It all started with the Famine Relief Code, which was a direct consequence of the Great Famine of Deccan Plateau in 1876-78. Thereafter, a scarcity division was made following the Great Bengal disaster or the Bengal famine, which happened in 1943. The first step, or I would say the first baby step which our nation took towards disaster management was the formation of National Disaster Management Division but it remained under the Ministry of Agriculture in 1947. Now, beyond 1947, because of political, social, security, and economic consideration, not much effort was made in this direction till as late as 1976, when 42nd Constitutional Amendment was passed, and 2 critical articles were passed in that. The trigger for our policymakers came in 1984 December with the Bhopal gas tragedy. After the tragedy, 4 critical acts were passed, and it set the stage for our nation to start thinking towards disaster management. And finally, in 1995, a division was created, that National Center for Disaster Management, which presently has transformed post-2005 into National Institute of Disaster Management. Though our policymaker was still in the drafting stage, but the states which were affected critically by the disaster, they took initiative and came up with their respective disaster management document led by Gujarat post-deadly 2001 earthquake. And as we all know, that in 2005, the Disaster Management Act was passed and various bodies were formed to look into this aspect. Now, in the international arena, a lot of activities were also being done. What I want to highlight over here is the Oslo guideline, which actually stimulate or which actually permits armies to carry out disaster relief operations in foreign land. So use of foreign military and civil defense assets in disaster relief with the core principle of humanity, impartiality, and neutrality, respecting the sovereignty of the state. Now, this is the provision which Indian Armed Forces use when there is disaster strikes in the neighborhood. And followed by that was the Hugo framework. During this time, our nation was thickly into formulating a policy, and last was the Sendai framework, which came in 2015 till 2030. And the 4 provisions which it lays down is to basically understand the disaster risk, strengthen the disaster governance, and invest in disaster reduction measures and enhance the resilience, and also enhance the preparedness level by building back better in recovery, rehabilitation, and reconstruction phases. So let us revisit what is the primary and the secondary role of Indian Armed Forces. Ladies and gentlemen, the primary role remains fixed, that we have to defend the national borders against external aggression and maintain territorial integrity. However, in the secondary role which has been legislated for the Indian Armed Forces is to provide humanitarian support and aid to civil authority during any calamity or natural disaster. So culling out from here, various roles which Indian Armed Forces have performed over a period of time is rescue and relief operations, including search and rescue, medical, logistical support, engineering support, and the specialist support because of the specialists we have under the belt. Now let's see the strengths of Indian Armed Forces over the period. We are a multi-domain organization with proficiencies in all the domains of land, air, sea, space, and cyber. Indian Army being the 4th largest strong force, we are virtually present in all the nooks and corners of the country, so inadvertently we become the first responders during any calamity. We have a phenomenal airlift capability with Indian Air Force, and we have a phenomenal beaching capability with Indian Navy and the maritime reach. So this permits this force to even approach those disaster-hit areas even when the ports and the airports have been destroyed by the disaster. The cyber capability, we are proficient in that, and we have a phenomenal track record of what we have done, which I'll be alluding also subsequently in my presentation. The logistic infrastructure the Indian Army has, or Indian Armed Forces has, is phenomenal, which we have the capacity to store, have strategic mobility, and also last-mile delivery, which can be made into those affected areas which the communications have been broken down. We are always trained, and we have quick reaction capability, and the technology modernization which is happening over a period of time has empowered us with satellite imagery, drones, communications, and surveillance means. Last but not the least, the international cooperation. Now this is very important. All exercises we do with foreign army, we make it a point to dwell into HADR operations, and as I speak to you in front of you, there are foreign exercises which are going on in Pune with Sri Lanka and over here with Nepal. So in all such exercises, we make it a point that we dwell and get the best practices out of each other, especially in this domain of humanitarian assistance. Now, what is the legal framework? Ladies and gentlemen, we are guided by these three fundamental documents when we go in for aid to civil authority, which is a document of 1970, and it permits us to carry out certain actions as flashed on the slide. And other two documents also guide as to how to go about such duty. Even post the Disaster Management Act of 2005, Army or Indian Armed Forces continue to be requisitioned under the gambit of Aid to Civil Authority 1970, and we are an on-call agency, though a formal document was documented before the act came in 2002, which still guides the Indian Armed Forces. So if you see, okay. I've been told to wind up early, so I will just flash that post-2005, there were certain three organizations which are looking after the disaster management, but post-2005, the special organizations have been carried out, have been created, and Indian Armed Forces still is guided by the ACA Act of 1970. These are the structures which have been devised under which the assistance is rendered to the affected communities, and various stakeholders which are involved in the civil domain are flashed on this slide. However, when it comes to Indian Armed Forces, we are utilized in all the phases, that is pre-disaster, during disaster, and post-disaster phases. The certain assistance which are carried out and given to the affected community, what I want to bring out over here is whenever any column is mobilized, it is mobilized with various specialists and experts, and various equipment is also mobilized along with the column. Now, if you see the track route, virtually all calamities which has hit the nation, Indian Armed Forces have practically been involved in rescue operations and HADR operations. And the assistance which we have rendered in last 2 years is as flashed on the slide. We have given 54 columns, rescuing around 31,000 citizens. Now the topic of the day is capacity building. I'll not dwell on this slide, but what I want to say that Indian Armed Forces, we have 10 ecological territorial army battalions which are deployed in 34 locations all over the country, and they are doing a yeoman service of plantation. Approximately 9 crore trees have been planted. We have been into Ganga cleaning projects, Amrit Sarovar. And apart from the ecological TA battalions, we also undertake something known as Operation Sadbhavna in insurgency-affected areas of J&K and northeastern state, where certain ecological conservative projects are implemented by the Indian Armed Forces.
Brigadier Pal,
right.
Can we please?
So as I conclude, I would just say the international outreach which we have done so far, that not only in the national arena, but Indian Armed Forces have also been helping the victims which have been affected by the disaster all over the world, starting from Sri Lanka, Pakistan, Myanmar, China, and Turkey. And last, not the least, the assistance which has been rendered by the armed forces during COVID, wherein we have evacuated 890 citizens, created 400 hospital beds and ICUs, and given phenomenal amount of oxygen support to the nation. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. It was a pleasure speaking in front of such august gathering.
Thank you.
And though I have taken more time than was allotted to me, thank you, sir.
Thank you, Brigadier Pal. We'll directly move to the next speaker, Ms. Safina Beg. She is coming from the Jammu Kashmir, district of Baramulla. So she will be presenting the district perspective. She is working as district officer on disaster management. And the most important is that she is representing the women power of this panel. So that's very important. In the beginning, we spoke about the women leadership. So over to you, Ms. Safina.
Thank you very much. Respected chair, co-chair, dignitaries, organizers, and future environment saviors, I feel honored to stand here with you as a spokesperson of Kashmir. I thank the organizer for this important event, for this opportunity to be in an environment that is similar to what we have in Kashmir. Sir, I am not an expert on this subject, but I am someone who is deeply connected with grassroots level. Standing here today, I am reminded of devastating earthquake of 2004, flood in 2014 in Kashmir. My special thanks to everyone who supported us in difficult times. And the most credible institution of our country, Army. Special thanks to Army. I want, applause for them. I will start with a quote. It is in Kashmiri, a quote from Sufi saint. His name is Nund Rishi. Unposh till one posh. That means Food will last as long as forests last. Sir, whatever I'm going to say is based on my personal experience. I'm here to laud the voice of Kashmir. We should summon all our human, technical, and material resource and chart out for reaching a policy of climate management and environmental protection. We should summon all our moral, environment, technical, and management resource to ensure that in respect of our future does not repent our past. A philosopher has rightly said that those who do not realize and correct the mistakes of their past will be condemned to relive it. Today's discourse has to be on the power trio of innovation, collaboration, and communication. We must understand the challenges and possibilities of ecosystem of mountains and valley. We must realize that our future in surrounding like this depends on our deep moral commitment to pool our resources. I hope a gathering like this, the present one here, today marks a historical landmark in our committed struggle to ensure that environmentally otherwise we stand firm and committed not only to preserve our present, but also to redeem our past. Let us together pool our moral, material, technical, and financial resources to ensure that our dream and our future is even better than our past. Kashmir, as you know, with its majestic peaks, verdant valleys, exemplifies the delicate balance between nature and human habitation. However, this balance is under threat. Rising temperature, erratic rainfall, natural disasters are challenging the resilience of our mountain communities. The need for tailored solutions that consider the unique vulnerabilities and strength of these ecosystems is paramount. As a representative from Jammu and Kashmir, I share the story of communities whose lives are intertwined with the mountains. Our farmers, our artisans, our shepherds are not only just victims of climate change, they are the stewards of these ecosystems. It is our responsibility to empower them with tools and knowledge to adapt sustainably while preserving the rich biodiversity that defines our mountain. The question arises in my mind, who do as a society we failed? I'm sorry to say, but I think as a society we failed in combating the climate change threat. One of the primary failures lies in the slow pace of global cooperation and the implementation of comprehensive measures. Despite mounting evidence of urgent need to address climate issues, geopolitical differences, economic interests, and short-term thinking have hindered the development of unified strategies. The stories from Kashmir are echoed in the narratives of countless mountain communities worldwide. It is imperative to amplify these voices and foster a deeper understanding of the interconnectedness of our ecosystem. Let our gathering today be more just than a platform for discourse. Let it be a catalyst for action. So, together with the innovation as our guide, collaboration as our strength, and communication as our beacon, we can safeguard our mountain and ensure a sustainable legacy for generations to come. I profoundly and sincerely thank you, all of you, for coming together as an act of hope. Now I will briefly suggest, because I can't go into details, limited time is allotted. So what we can do, there are few suggestions. Collaborative research initiatives, communication for knowledge transfer, inclusive technological solutions, cross-sector collaboration, culture preservation through innovation, community-based disaster preparedness, and I will focus on this because this is my topic. As chairperson of the largest district of Jammu and Kashmir with 402 panchayats and also strategically very important district, I have dealt with this issue during COVID pandemic. I'm sorry, I have some issue in my throat. Communication infrastructure development, ecotourism promotion, capacity building through collaboration. I think the community participation is the most effective element to achieve sustainability in dealing with natural and man-made disasters. We should adopt a new strategy.
Ms. Safina, can we?
Yes, I will take 2 minutes. That is people directly in planning. We should involve vulnerable people directly in planning and implementation of mitigation, response, and recovery measures. three-tier system, the Panchayati Raj institution, we should involve Panchayati Raj institution, both in disaster risk reduction and post-disaster management is very important. We must integrate disasters preparedness into core system, starting from the grassroots level. So that is my point. But anyways, Jammu and Kashmir government has emphasized need for the effective disaster risk reduction, that is through Shirkat program, and we have started it from district Pulwama. But it is important to make disaster resilience an inherent part of our community disaster. What I want to convey in simple language, that even if we have good policies, resources, expert advice, but if we don't train our grassroots workers at the grassroots level, because they are the frontline workers, we have to train them, we have to empower them, we have to reward them. I just want to share a simple example and very inspiring story. Just give me 2 minutes more, because I'm from the northwest of India. You can't ignore me.
We have two
only 2 minutes. 2 minutes only, and the only lady, someone covered head. So, anyways, you know what happened? In 2019, I was present in a award function, Padam Award. There was a lady, old lady. She was a casual labor in forest department, age 112. She received Padam Award for her contribution to Mother Earth. Kya tha uska? She planted trees. She planted trees, on national highway, and with bare foot, nothing, illiterate. See her contribution. If she can do it, why not we? We can also do it. So I want to take a pledge and conclude this. So let us pledge, all of us, let us pledge that every tree that falls for our need, we should plant 2 trees. Thank you very much. मैं डरती हूँ, मुझे जीने दो, मुझे मेरे हाल में जीने दो, मेरे बच्चे मेरे दुश्मन हैं, ये बांझ गरी के माहिर हैं, कब मेरे राज को समझेंगे. Thank you very much.
Thank you, बहुत shukriya. And the only comment, not the compliment, the salute to women power. So let us have a round of applause for 2 women in the panel. And now, directly requesting Dr. O.P. Singh, the co-chair, to give a brief summary, and then we'll be requesting the other co-chair to share the points emerging for the future.
The most difficult task to summarize the outstanding speakers that we had, including chairman, we had 6 panelists from all over the globe, and it was a very tough decision because all of them were outstanding. And if I have to summarize in one sentence, all I can say is that all the speakers said only one sentence, and that was that building resilience is not a personal choice, but it is a collective imperative. Everybody has to go for building the capacity at its own level. I'm privileged to act as co-chair here on this crucial theme. This session definitely is serving as an invaluable platform to explore innovative strategies at the local level, exchange knowledge, and foster collaborative efforts that perhaps will elevate capacity building in all aspects, be it preparedness, be it response or recovery strategies across the world in different communities. And as we delve into the complexities of the whole thing, we look forward to, at the end, we look forward to have a very, very engaging takeaway from this particular conference. Friends, the chair introduced the subject in a beautiful manner. All that he said was that we need to have capacity building at every level. And it's a two-way process, which was something very illuminating for all of us. The panelists, particularly from France, Ms. Gracia, from Australia, Dr. Iftikhar Ahmed, Brigadier Upendra Pal Singh, Dr. Sanjay Srivastava online, Dr. Akhilesh again from Australia, Ms. Safina Beg from J&K. All these panelists were equivocal in stressing the fact that the capacity building is very, very essential. And some of them talked about the communication strategy. Communication is something which we need to understand while we are discussing risk and understanding disasters. Dr. Iftikhar Ahmed, he talked about his experiences based on his various approaches, And he probably said that local knowledge had to be synthesized with global know-how, and listening is much more important than talking. And he gave examples of Fiji and Bangladesh, which was very, very relevant. Mr. Torres from Ecuador, he also talked about 2017 7.8 earthquake, and probably he talked about the proper use of bamboo, which is so, so important. In fact, in India also, when I was heading NDRF, we had a battalion based in Pune, and we're still having that. And we used to develop a lot of indigenous materials out of that surplus things. So that is something which are very important for all of us to know. Dr. Sanjay Srivastava spoke from Thailand online, and he talked about the UN perspective to capacity building, which was very essential, translational science and anticipatory science, about which the chair also elaborated a little bit. Dr. Akhilesh Surjan, he talked about the challenges of emerging management volunteers. We know that how the volunteers are so important. And I had my personal experience in NDRF that we had seen those volunteers working day in and day out. I'm talking of 2014 Srinagar flood, which I led myself personally from the front, or I talk about Nepal earthquake in 2015, where we had no dearth of volunteers, and they came, but we need to institutionalize the system of volunteers in our country, which is so badly required. And he talked about Japan, tsunami, Australia. So these are very essential examples to listen to. Brigadier Upendra Pal Singh was fabulous in his approach. He talked about the entire vulnerability profile of the country, talked about how the role of Indian armed forces. I have seen myself being associated with NDRF. I know how Indian armed forces are doing yeoman service to the country, whether it's humanitarian assistance or whether it's during the COVID time or anything. The first responder, though technically could be anyone, but Army has always been in the forefront. Whether you talk of Kedarnath tragedy of 2013, or you talk of Srinagar urban flood, or you talk of Nepal earthquake in 2015. I was closely associated with General Sandhu when I was there in Nepal to tackle the earthquake. And last but not the least, Madam Safina Beg was a district worker at grassroots level. And she also talked about earthquake of Jammu and Kashmir in 2004, as well as Srinagar flood of 2014. Friends, we all know that disasters threaten to become a major reversal to human and economic progress. We don't have to deny that. And particularly the area where we are living, South Asia, that is facing the wrath of natural disasters with greater frequency and with greater intensity and scale. And that is why we have to be very, very alert, and we have to build our capacity at any cost. I wouldn't like to go because the time is very short and we have another co-chair to say this, but I'm really thankful, and I see the people listening to us so attentively that it makes the point that capacity building is so important for all of us when we delve into the issues of disaster management. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. O.P. Singh. Very meticulously, very systematically, very timely. We know that you headed NDRF, so how systematically the things are operated. So wonderfully, and thanks for making this wonderful. Now over to the next co-chair. For points for the future, we'll try to take one or two questions if the time permits, but we'll decide once the future points are read by the co-chair.
Good afternoon, dignitaries on the dais and off the dais and the fellows in the room. It was a very interactive session, very interesting also, which also summarized by my fellow co-chair. We had a spectrum of speakers across the globes, and very different dimensions they put to the thing. A common thing, capacity building. Yesterday I was again, you can understand this subject to the fact that yesterday I was in Goa and having a brainstorming workshop on this same topic in the risk in high mountains, where we decided to do the many technical things, including the need identification for new sensors in the satellites. But finally, at the end of the day, everyone came out to this point, then how to communicate with the communities, how to sensitize the communities. And today, and then the very next day, I'm standing before you and deliberating on this topic. So right now, we have very clearly emerged three things. One is a human face of the disaster. By the people, for the people, we are approaching this kind of thing where we are seeing the inclusiveness, how we can take the things in inclusive coming from us to they or we. Convergence of all these terms, so bringing into the philosophy of the capacity building. And more importantly, the effective communication. We are looking forward that innovative way to communicate with the communities, societies at a large or locally very specifically. This communication must be not in a preaching mode, but a way that it can be understood by the local communities. And through the local resources, local expertise available. This is a third method. Third dimension we are looking for that, how to develop like we have in India, Abda Mitra, and many times these volunteers. These could be a method of communicating also, not at the time of event of the disaster. That more importantly, the point came as a women and empowerment to the society, how to deal with the disaster, risk, developing resilience and adaptation strategies. So these are the basic elements of the human face which we can carry further from this point. But interestingly, on the methods part, we are looking for very interestingly on the communication which is with the human face as well as the tool also in the capacity building and participatory action research when you are dealing with the communities. So how to build these two things into the methods and the tools is very important. And the training of trainers or the volunteers in capacity building at the large, when the main system is not in place, that time their roles is very important to conduct various activities and operations. But very important thing which emerged from this discussion was the locally available natural resource can be a very effective tool to develop resilience and the adaptation to the disasters. And if you talk about the science, then transition sites and science communication, much before that any event, that people are ready and they have a readiness or a preparedness in mind existing that these are the impacts and we can tackle them in which way. So in that way, we have to build a capacity of the grassroots institutions which came very properly today. And the entire philosophy must revolve around the local context. And this is very much required as a feedback mechanism for the top to down or bottom to top approaches. So in that way, this convergence is important when we talk about these communications, effectiveness, and preparedness. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Co-Chair Professor Subrat Sharma. I think very nicely you identified the key points. In fact, the panel is facing dual pressure. One is that we have already encroached the lunchtime, but the panel was so rich that we had to do, and we were greatly supported by the audience because the learned experts and the delegates are here, and almost 2 p.m. And they were here. So that shows that the interest in the subject of capacity building. So thank you so much for joining. We know that there are certain very igniting questions or igniting points to share, but managing the dual pressure, on one side, we are being asked to close the session. On the other side, there are issues emerging as feedback and reflections. So I would suggest that we utilize the food court for this knowledge exchange as a follow-up of this session. So thank you very much, my all fellow panelists and the co-chairs and the people traveling across the continents to join and make this session rich, and each and everyone who is present in this hall, because this shows that how much importance we are giving to the subject of capacity building, and let us work to bring a transformation in our approach to capacity building. So thank you very much, and now we'll close this session. Thank you.
Let's give them a good round of applause. Every one of them traveled thousands or hundreds of miles to be here. They carried a lot of their experience, their hearts, treasured it, and have shared before us. Thank you so much for that. I would like to request some of our dignitaries to come and present the mementos. May I request Lieutenant General Ravi Shankar ji and also Major General Patnaik ji to please come up and present the mementos. Also Dr. Kalachan Shain, and then Brigadier Ashok Abeji, please come, and Professor Rima Pant, and Professor Narpender Singh ji, and Professor N.P. Singh. It's a high-powered group. We are getting the high-powered dignitaries to present you the mementos. Yeah, please come, our volunteers. Sir, Ravi Shankar ji, please, yeah. Present to the chair, please, yeah. Yeah. Let's give a good round of applause to the chair. Show me the names and go. Yeah. Dr. Shubhrat Sharma will receive, please. Yeah. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Yeah. Yeah. May I request Kalachan Sanji to please present to the next co-chair. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Request Narpender Singh ji to please present the mementos. There it is? Yeah. Please go ahead. Go ahead. Yeah. Request Professor Rima Panji also to please give the memento to one of the dignitaries. Go ahead, ma'am. Yeah. Professor N.P. Singh ji, please. Yeah. Yeah. Echo with sir. Yeah. After Rima ji. Yeah. Thank you, sir. Go. Yeah. Yeah. Please suggest the name. Yeah. Yeah, they're waiting. Go ahead. N.P. Singh ji, please. Yeah. Read the name. Dr. Anand Babu also will give to the rest. Yeah. Thank you. I'm sorry if the certificates were mixed up. Sorry, but they are correcting now. Yeah, please. Dear friends, we want to thank our chair, co-chairs, and all the panelists for doing an excellent, presentations and inspiring everyone. Yeah. Yeah, would you please step forward for a group photo, if you don't mind? Would you please step forward for a group photo? Kindly step forward for a group photo. Please hold on. There's one more small ceremony. A colleague from Bangladesh is here to express his fondness, appreciation, and gratitude to the WCDM team and others. So please stay on. It will be another 5 minutes. We won't hold you too long before your lunch. Okay. Another 5 minutes, then you can do your media bite. There's one more small ceremony. Yeah, you can. But there will be some talk happening. Professor Akbaruddin, can you come up slowly? Yeah. While the photo is being taken, we need you so we can complete it fast. Thank you very much. Who? I called, but he hasn't come. I called, Professor. Yeah, Ashoka Bijay called, but yeah, sorry about that. Yeah. I called, yeah.
Because then they'll leave. Just take the bite quickly.
No, just last 5 minutes. Professor Akbaruddin Ahmad from Bangladesh is here. He has a small message to Dr. Babu and a few of the members of the DMICS. Please come, Professor Akbaruddin, this side. You want to say a word now or last? Yeah, because we're running short of time. Yeah, it's working. Please.
Professor, all the academics over here, Dr. Ananda Babu, Mr. Ray, and the rest of the people who have come from all over the world, heartiest congratulations for very successful WCDM. From the Policy Research Center in Bangladesh, we are trying to show our appreciation